Hi Amanda, how are you going? Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks, Amber. How are you? I'm doing really well, and I'm glad to be here, I think. I'll tell you later.
So today we're here to talk about your work, Everything is Funny, the love song of MJ and Princess Dark Clouds in the Southwestern Times Art 2020 exhibition. And I wanted to know what some of your key ideas behind the work were.
I think I was thinking of about brokenness. I was thinking about courage, and I was thinking about recovery from a mental health perspective, and from my own experience of people dealing with trauma in their lives, and people who've been diagnosed with PTSD. But I don't know whether I thought that as the process went along, but that was the kind of the big thing in my mind, that I wanted to, in some ways, honour people who were courageously dealing with some of those things, and people who I'd seen and loved doing that. I was also thinking that I wanted to make something beautiful, and ask the question, through this trauma, can we find beauty out of brokenness? And can light be found in dark places? And I knew that that was true. I knew that light can emanate from those places. So those kind of ideas came together in the actual doing of it. But I hadn't thought of little mirror mosaic blocks and shapes and a film of my nephew and the colours or anything like that. It just sort of started with that idea. And it also started with a cartoon, a Looney cartoon. And so that's where the title comes from, that everything is funny. So really, even the things that I'm saying, the seriousness of it, because it doesn't make light. And that's kind of the theme. Let's make light. Light can be found in darkness, but in reality, it's all light. Sort of, that's the sort of idea. So, yeah, it came from very intensely personal things. And a sense of honouring people whose courage that I'd seen dealing with traumatic events. Yeah.
What are some of your artistic processes? So you had just mentioned the installation. It comes in so many different forms, from the mosaics and the belts and the projection. How did these kind of processes and materials kind of all come into one place to make this incredible artwork?
I think I started with the mirrors because there was 3 stories that led me to the mosaic mirrors. And that was one when I was in Midland doing some training, and I would just stand on the streets and watch all the people go by who are affected by drugs or affected by poverty, and sometimes chat to some people. And one of those people I didn't chat to her, but there was an old Aboriginal lady coming by, and she clearly had been sniffing something. And I just went, she was walking right by me, and she was just staring at me, but not really connecting with me. So I just sort of said, "How are you going?" And there was nothing. There was no recognition, nothing. And then I just felt that she was one of the saddest people I'd ever seen. And she stepped off the curb, and I thought she was going to try and get into this car, but she went around near the driver's side and stared into the rearview mirror. And it was a very sad sight, as someone who was trying to look in the mirror to see that they could see themselves or know where they are, know who they are. And it was very sad. And then again, I tried to talk to her, but she was not interested in the world, it didn't seem. And then she walked off down the street. That was one story about mirrors. And then another one is, I went to live with a cousin of mine when a shared house broke down or something, and I had nowhere to live. So I went and met with her, and I noticed she had mirrors everywhere, all throughout the house, everywhere mirrors. So you'd wake up and sit up in bed, and there would be a mirror, and there'd be mirrors everywhere, and mirrors in the bathroom, which was mirrors in the shower, which was kind of an interesting thing to do, showering with great big full-length mirrors. And oh, that's what I look like when I shower. Anyway, there was mirrors, and I was puzzled by this, and I asked her, why so many mirrors? And she said, "That's so I know I exist." And so that is another mirror story that happened before the Aboriginal lady. So when those 2 things happened, I immediately put them together. And the third mirror story is MJ and Princess Dark Clouds. I'm not MJ, so I must be the other one. He used to have a disco ball, and so when I was in his little flat, and I used to, for ages on end, for hours on end sometimes, if you'd let me, just shine the torch onto this disco ball so the light shone on the thing. And I was falling in love, and there was all this light, and I was in love with myself, falling in love, you know how you are. And so that was the third story, which is a lovely one. And I kind of put those things together. MJ was diagnosed with PTSD, and being up and close with the struggle of that, the daily, sometimes minute to minute, hour to hour daily struggle with those kind of things. And then there was all this light and love as well. So they're the three stories that sort of mingled in my mind as I was. Then I decided that what I would do is use those mirror tiles. The reason too for that is that you can't see yourself in there. If you try and look in that, your nose is over here, your eyes are over here, there's a brokenness to it. You can't quite pull yourself together. And from my perspective, watching someone who's had trauma in their lives, it was a little bit like that. I'm altered, I'm changed, I'm broken, I'm humiliated, I'm nothing like how I used to be, and I can't even see a way where I can be. But then I witnessed where I was part of that as well. I suppose that you can not necessarily put yourself back together how you were, but in part of the recovery is finding the beauty in what you are now. And I was also just going to talk a little bit about the process of making it, in that I was, and this was a practical thing, I was caring for my elderly mother. I couldn't, while I was making this, and I couldn't move very far. So it was actually made in her room while she's sleeping or eating or whatever. And she was my constant companion making this. We'd go and get the tiles from the shop, and we'd come back. And so a little bit of the light coming from that emanates from her too. She's a very big part of that. What's around you also affects how I made it.
I think people have really assumptions of how artistic processes happen, and that everybody just gets up at 8 a.m. and goes and does art till 4 p.m. and then cooks dinner and then goes to bed, that kind of thing. And I suppose I'm so interested in the way you make and how you made this piece, because it's not like that. You were under certain circumstances that meant that you were home, and also because of your, like, how much your personal narrative is intertwined in the work as well. I just feel like that just adds, hearing that is really a really amazing insight for the audience to see how your artistic process happens.
I mean, I guess I don't know whether everybody creates because you've got something to say. You know how people say, oh, what have they got to say? What's the poet got to say? What is the kind of big thing they've got to say? I remember watching a Bob Dylan, I think it's called Don't Look Back or something like that. Anyway, it was made by Scorsese, and some of the poets, the beat poets around at that time were this new voice. So Dylan, as a young man, had started writing songs, and when one of those beat poets, I can't remember who it was, heard it, read one of the or heard the song, he wept because he knew there was a new voice. And he said, you know, in those times people would go, well, what have they got to say? And I was thinking of that. I was thinking, what have I got to say? Do I need to be saying something? And I guess I wanted to say that. I wanted it to be viewed. I wanted it to be heard. I wanted to be heard. So there's all those things. I felt a little bit, I don't know whether this is a selfish thing or it really just comes from me. I wanted maybe people with trauma or people who are broken to be heard. And that's kind of why I made it. Whether that happens or not is up to viewers. And but I did definitely think, and of course also I had to think about that room. I had to think about the space, because it wasn't something that was going to hang in like a big gallery with other pieces. So I was so grateful to have that space, because it was it just seemed to fit in there perfectly. And so it was you know, you're a bit limited, sometimes you're limited by space, but you're going to get more people to view it. And entering into a room is a bit like how you were saying, it was important to enter into a room, a womb, place, a space that someone's invited you into to have this experience. So and also I wasn't going to hang belts I wasn't sure how to hang it. I knew I kind of wanted it like that, so the light would, the film of my nephew with all the red would bounce off there and create the light on the walls, but I wasn't quite sure how to hang it. And then I thought of men's belts, because I sort of wanted it to be a little bit about men's health and mental health. So I put the men's belts up there, and that altered it slightly, a little bit. It added to it. So that was a last minute thing in terms of how it would be seen, how it might be experienced, that the little mosaic things were hanging by belts. So yes, I do think about how it's going to be viewed. But after you give it over, you can't like stand there and say, this is what I meant. Or this is what I thought, or please read my poem before entering. I'm not in control of that. So it's what people, when they enter into it, what they see. But yeah, I certainly did it with an audience in mind, for sure.
We had a school group that went through it, and they were just in awe of it because of all the different materials and the different elements of it. And then it was a really nice experience then having a discussion with them about the title, and they had the choice of going into it further or just having this experience of being in this sparkly, very reflective space.
Yes.
And they could, because of all the different, the belts and the projection and the sheet and the mirror, they could interpret it how they will.
That's right.
And then the title, Everything is Funny. I just love that because it was so ironic, because it was this dark, moody space and everything is funny, which I feel like, I like the way you take things. I really love that idea behind the work, that the whole idea of the light in the darkness kind of thing. I think it's
and then the sound, that's that tinkly sound, is like a whole lot of boats. I've forgotten what they're called now. The mast, and it has the mast and the rope, the lanyard. All the lanyards are banging on a very windy beach. And I got that because his MJ's little unit where the disco ball there was right near a yacht club. So that's how I would go to sleep, with that sound of the lanyards. And I found that beautiful sound on freesound.com. And it was just perfect, because it could be anything, and it sounds like wind chimes. It's a pretty sparkly sound that goes with it. But it, for me, sometimes that was it could be a very dark sound. And if the wind is whipped up, it could be quite an angry, aggressive sound. So that just fitted perfectly. And that was kind of a semi-last minute thing as well. So.
And the video of your nephew?
The video of the nephew, he came to visit over Christmas from over East, and he's normally not one to do that. And I had borrowed a light wave disco thing, that you have at kids' discos, or and I borrowed one, and I just beamed that onto him because I wanted that particular red color or orangey red color, and he was happy to pose, and he looked really good. And I might do something else with that film, because you couldn't really see him. If you went behind it, you could make out, or maybe it was just because I knew he was on that film, you could make out like a nose floating up in the air and an eye floating there. So that was really good, what was behind it. So I might actually make use of that film in another way. And Peter Jago, who was very, very helpful, helping me with the film. And then there was a young student, secondary school student, who helped edit it, because all these things are something that I need to learn in the future, because I didn't have them. So it all kind of came together as a collaborative thing, and it all just sort of fell into place organically. Somehow it all came together to be that. And the Everything is Funny title comes from a Lunic poem, which I think you've read or seen, and which is called Welcome to the Club. And it was kind of how MJ lived his life a little, that he carried that poem around, that cartoon around, that Lunic cartoon. And it was about what he saw was his fall from a great height, humiliation, about failure. But you can find, again, that poem sort of seems, welcome to the club. There's a lot of us here. We can be kind to each other here. We understand each other here. It's actually not too bad here. We can be wise here. we can be strong here. And he used to quote in the Latin, which I can't remember. I used to be able to remember it. He used to quote, "Everything is funny." I've just got to right. I can't remember it. It's gone out of my brain. Okay, obviously there's a big blank space here. Oh, okay, I found it. So he used to quote from this Looney poem, "Everything is funny, growth through humiliation and wisdom through loss." And he used to say that all the time. And related to that, he always used to say, "It's theatre, mate. It's all theatre. Sit back and watch." And that's a little bit mindful, you know, when you've got something going on and there's drama going on, then step back from it, witness it as if it's an interesting thing. Give it a different colour. This is from a counselling session that I had once. But there is a mindfulness, a sense of mindfulness, and that's kind of what he naturally did. And a lot of it came from this poem and from him having a lot of time to think. And that was, you know, part of his recovery and part of his connecting to others again. Yeah. So it was an incredible journey, and I just wanted to honour that, because it takes enormous bravery and courage to both live it and to share it with others.
And you, in the catalogue, Amanda, you had written a poem to go alongside the piece. Would you mind saying your poem to us, reading your poem to us?
I will. Okay. Light dancing in a darkened van, discarded by all else. Eddie's Jarl licks into corners and turns back in a wet embrace. He was brave, I say. He let me love him, I say to his sister as she wept. I am altered.
Thank you so much. It's such a beautiful poem, and I really love how, the words and your stories and how that all kind of encompasses to make your artwork and make you, Amanda, as this amazing artist. And a lot of people wouldn't know that you've only been practicing for a couple of years making. I just think, your artwork is incredible, and I can't wait to see what you get up to next.
Me too. Thank you so much, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. It's been lovely.
Wonderful. We'll speak soon.
Okay. Thanks, Amber. Bye.